Terrific. It shows we are live. I'm just going to go ahead and wait a couple minutes and see what friends we can have hop on with us this morning before we kick off our broadcast. So give it a few. Excellent. It looks like we already have someone that is watching and tuning in. So perfect. Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday. It feels like Friday just from the volume of everything, but I so appreciate you tuning in to our morning webinar COVID-19 series. I am Juliette Abdel, President and CEO of the Westminster Chamber of Commerce, and we're so excited to have you tuned in or watching this on replay. If this is your first time with us, then please be sure you go to the videos section and load up on everything that we have been doing since March. Educational trainings for your business on how to adapt during this time of COVID, along with various updates from our city all the way to our county and state elected, sharing with you what's going on and what things they're doing to combat the situation that we are in. If you haven't already, please be sure that you like this page and you follow us, but also find us on other social media platforms. So we are on YouTube as Westminster Chamber, and then we're on Twitter and Instagram at Westy Chamber. Each of our platforms allow for different information sharing. Those platforms are great opportunities for you to find out various resources that we either tweet out or share out about COVID or just updates on things that we're doing. I think that's it for kind of chamber background on everything, but I wanted to kind of go into our discussion. And today's topic is buying or selling business in wake of COVID-19. Now, I want to preface this and share, this is not a way to try and take away any hope or sentiment. We are here, we're strong, we're supporting our business community by providing you resources and solutions timely, by advocating for you, seeking funding options, and looking for ways that you can continue to adapt and survive and then thrive after this whole situation passes us. This topic is more for the folks that are kind of interested in looking at business prospects. So think of the entrepreneur in you. Were you considering a business before and buying it? You know, maybe now you're at a different phase in your life and you want to transition to another career path, or, you know, you were already considering selling a business but didn't really understand the how-to behind it. That's what this webinar is for. For those of you that are not in that category, know that we are in full support of you retaining your business, growing, and moving forward. I am delighted to have with me two incredible people. One is Chris Cantwell from Transworld Business Advisors, and the other is Mike O'Donnell from Colorado Lending Source. Now, you may be familiar with Mike. He came on here before and touched a little bit about funding options or loans that are available, and he has a specific program that ties it very well into this broadcast. So, a reminder for you, if you have questions or comments, please type them in the questions or comment section of this video so we can address it. If you like what we're saying, make sure you give us thumbs up so we can feel great about ourselves and keep going all the way through. And if you cannot hear us or the video starts to break up, let us know so we can try and address it. With that, I'll have Chris take it away.
Thank you, Julia, and good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Cantwell, and I am a senior business broker with Transworld Business Advisors. And I like to say that I work with people who create products and services other people value. Yes, I work with entrepreneurs, and specifically I work with those who might be looking to sell a small business and those that might be looking to buy a small business. So first and foremost, I hope the current business owners out there are all doing well and doing what they can to keep their businesses rolling. I know that the PPP funds have been replenished, and I'm sure Mike may cover that when he's about to talk here from Colorado Lending Source and what's going on that side of the CARES Act anyhow. So if you're applying for some of those PPP loans, I know some of our current clients have received them and some of them are still waiting. So maybe check with your bankers, but I'll let Mike talk on that. And then obviously these are unprecedented times. We've never been in a situation like this where we've either had to close or completely restructure the way we do business. And I work with small privately held businesses, and these are the businesses that have been impacted the most. Some are closed, some are open, but have lost, anywhere from 50 to 70% of their revenue, and other more essential businesses are thriving. So at some point down the road, a business owner may consider selling their business, and hopefully it's for all the right reasons and it's not a distressed situation. We can certainly help in both of those situations. So whatever the case may be, when looking back for valuation purposes, this current business period we're in will be called a one-time non-recurring event. And this may or may not hurt your business valuation. Most likely the next 2 or 3 quarters will be a determining factor. So we're going to have to see kind of how these businesses progress after we get past and get to a more normal operating situation. So whether someone's on the sell side or buy side, we're going to see plenty of activity in the business sale market. So on the buyer side, maybe you or someone you know has been laid off, or it's just time to leave that corporate job and go be an entrepreneur. The incentives to buy a business are going to be strong for really the next few quarters. Right now, there's some incentives such as borrowing against your 401k to either put a down payment on a business or to flat out buy a business, and you won't have to pay that 10% penalty. The SBA is going to be really aggressive with some of their loans, business-related loans, such as a 7A. Right now, they're offering an incentive where if you fund a business acquisition with the 7A loan, your payments, your first 6 months payments are going to be waived, not deferred to the back end. They're going to be completely waived. So it's an opportunity for you to buy a business, not make any payments. For the first 6 months, you'll be able to take all that cash and put it into working capital, and that'll give you a great foundation for the transition of you buying this business and taking it forward. So currently they're offering that through September 27th. And again, if Mike wants to touch on that, I'll let him. And then another positive is interest rates could be 5% or lower for some of these business acquisitions. And I think those interested sellers might be a little more open to doing some seller financing. It just depends on the situation. There's a lot of variables to how many of these deals are structured. So whether you've got questions about selling a business, whether it's now or 5-10 years down the road, every business owner should have an exit plan. And I'm happy to just chat with them and give them ideas and help them understand how valuations work in the business market. And for those who are maybe trying to get out of that corporate job, or again, have been laid off and you want to go buy a business and have a little more control of your destiny, I can help and offer advice there and let you know what we have as well. That's what I've got to start with, Juliet.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. So we've got a lot of people that kind of just hopped on. It looks like we have Counselor Bowles that has joined us. Thank you for coming on here. A few board members. Hi, Wayne and Jason and Marianne. Oh, it looks like some from out of state. Richard. Hello, and Parker. Just wanting to recap, if you're just now hopping on, we're visiting about buying and selling business. Generally the sentiment behind it, and not in times of distress like presently, but various things that are out there for you if you were already thinking about this, if you were considering it, and tips for the entrepreneur that might be in you. So we had Chris share a couple of comments that are on there. It looks like we have a small business owner that just kind of commented. Tina, she has a business that's up at the Orchards, and it just shared this is great info. So thank you, Chris, for touching on that. Absolutely. Our next speaker that we have with us is Mike O'Donnell. Mike is the lead at the Colorado Lending Source and is full of a lot of information related to funding. So if you are interested in that, he is your go-to person. And if you have any questions or comments, please be sure that you drop them in this video section so we can pull them up for you.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for that, Chris. Am I getting echo? Am I okay?
A little bit.
Okay. Should I set? Is this better?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'll just yell. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today. Colorado Lending Source, we're actually a nonprofit economic development organization. So as a mission-based nonprofit, we're really in the education game as much as we are in the lending game. We work with all of the different Small Business Administration, the SBA loan programs, as well as the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA loan programs, which is similar to SBA. So Chris referred to the 7A program. There are actually 11 now different SBA programs, including the Paycheck Protection Program. And just talking back to that, for those of you who haven't applied through your bank, you should do that because that program is an amazing program to offer you the chance to get a forgivable loan to help you bring people back. Looking at the numbers that came out this morning, there've been about 100,000 of those loans processed yesterday, which isn't very many, which means that the fund should be around for a little bit longer. And even we, Colorado Lending Source, are able to help with processing some of those loans ourselves. But start with your bank and talk with them first. For the perspective of how the SBA could work with someone who's trying to either buy a business or buy a building for their business, really the Guaranteed Loan Program, the SBA 7A loan program, and has lots of variations around that name, is a great way. And we see a lot of people using that program to do business acquisitions. Those programs, just like Paycheck Protection, are operated through banks. A bank will participate and involve the SBA in the background to guarantee a percentage of the loan they make to you, the purchaser of the business. And as Chris mentioned, there is a small business debt relief section in the CARES Act that a lot of people haven't noticed, but it does provide the federal government is making loan payments on SBA loans for the next 6 months. So it's probably a really great time for you to explore SBA. I also want to mention the little known program in the SBA world called the SBA 504 loan program. And Colorado Lending Source was created back 30 years ago to really help small businesses in this state access that program. And that program is different from the Guarantee Loan Program, the 7A program, because it's a public sector, private sector partnership. Typically to get an SBA 504 loan, which is something you can use to buy the building or the facility you primarily operate your business out of. And we're looking at 51% of the building is active for your business. But the SBA 504 loan provides an opportunity for a bank to partner with a public sector organization like us. So a bank will typically do 50% of the financing. A nonprofit like us can do 40% of the financing. And you as the business owner get in with a very defined down payment. If you work with a typical bank loan to buy commercial real estate, the bank will often want you to have 25% down and sometimes more in a crisis like this. The way the 504 program is advantageous to you is it defines that down payment. If you've been in business before and have had at least a 2-year track record, it's 10% down. If you're a brand new business, it's 15% down, but that's the defined down payment. And then you have actually 2 loans, a bank loan at 50% of the purchase price, and then a loan from a group like us. And there are plenty of choices like us in Colorado, 200 of us in the country that provide these 504 loan programs. But the huge advantage given the interest rate environment today is that our 25-year fixed rate 504 loan, the junior loan behind the bank loan, is just a hair over 3%. And if you want a 20-year version of that loan, it's just under 3%. So from the perspective of investing in the real property that you might operate your business out of, from a long-term perspective, to Chris's point, looking at perhaps exit strategies 20, 30 years from now, owning a building that also houses your business is probably a really good strategy for you to explore. And given the interest rate environment as it is today, if you're able to explore that, it's really to your advantage because, we're going to go through this crisis and eventually in the not too distant future, things will be back to sort of normal and we'll start to see interest rates creep back up again. And I predict we'll see a little bit of inflation sort of creep up a bit too. So from a long-term perspective, if you have the opportunity for whatever reason to explore the chance to buy the facility your business operates out of, it's probably not a bad thing for you to explore. Again, working with your financial advisors or Chris, and Juliet can give you some guidance on this as well. But I wanted to at least make you aware of the 504 loan program, which is, again, in the world of SBA, it's often forgotten. But in our history here in Colorado, we've helped with about 3,500 SBA 504 projects in the States. And many, many businesses in the Westminster community have used that program to invest in the real property they operate their business out of. And so even though it's not on everyone's radar today because people aren't really thinking about very much about buying buildings, but it is an opportunity should you wish to explore it. So with that, I'll pass it back to Juliet, who can tell me what.
Well, I think those are excellent points, Mike. And before I start taking up questions and comments, and I have a comment for you, it looks like we've gotten a new wave of people that have joined us. Councillor Seymour, thank you for tuning in. Hi, State Representative Tracy Kraft-Tharp and Parker, Steve Lake, and several others. So if you're just now tuning in, if you have questions or comments, please be sure to drop them into the video section. We're touching on buying and selling. We just had Mike discuss a program that he offers, his nonprofit offers in conjunction with SBA on purchasing the building that you operate a business therein, and if it makes sense for you. So Mike, we also touched a little bit about the PPP and the CARES slightly, and how that's just recently been refunded. Applications reopened on Monday. And is there anything you want to reference? I know there was some questions from existing businesses that felt like they had applied and hadn't received. And I think that's been a little bit, addressed by sharing that anyone that's previously applied, those would be handled first before the new applicants. But is there anything else that you wanted to share or reference about that funding?
And we would hope that the case. Keep moving further back here. And again, a lot of banks are processing the requests. There was some difficulty and challenges getting into the system the SBA has yesterday. They've actually choked down the system to make it a little bit harder for banks to actually process as many as they used to try and spread the funds out a little bit more. And this morning they came up with a rule that you can't use your robot to actually submit loans, which a lot of the larger banks do. So that will actually make it a little more equitable. If you've got your application with your bank, you should check with the bank and see if they can tell you whereabouts that is in your queue. Again, and we have this time under Paycheck Protection, a couple of different buckets of funds. We've got the bank bucket, which is $250 billion, a lot less than we had the first time around, and just as much demand for those funds. Mm-hmm. And then there's a $30 billion bucket set aside for we nonprofits and small lenders like small banks and credit unions. And then there's another $30 billion set aside for sort of slightly bigger but smaller banks. So it's very likely that the bank funds will move through fairly quickly once people work out the technology. And then there might be more funding available if you weren't successful with that to talk with either a small entity or a small bank or even a nonprofit to try and access the program. But it is such an amazing program. We do anticipate that the funding from the bank bucket will probably run out within a week. And then perhaps there's the opportunity for you to access other programs. Lots of other programs are actually being treated at the present time. So we're trying to provide as much resources from our nonprofit world as well as from SBAs to try and really help as many businesses as we can.
Thank you, Mike. I'll come back to you with a question on that, but it looks like we have a few. These are, I think, directed more to Chris, but if there's anything that you can chime in on, that would be terrific. We have Wayne with us that's sharing if the business's credit impacts the sale price of a business. For example, a business gets sent to collections during this time. Would that impact the sale price of the business?
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer my thoughts on that. A couple things. There's two ways to actually acquire a business. There's what's called an asset sale and a stock sale. In an asset sale, you're truly buying the tangible assets and the goodwill of the business. So the physical assets and then the name, the goodwill, the reputation, the phone's going to ring tomorrow. It's been around for 20 years. So as a buyer, I'm going to start a brand new entity. I'm going to buy the assets of that business. I'm going to keep the name and everything's going to look the same on the outside, but it's an entirely new company. So in essence, the balance sheet stays with the seller. So cash in the bank stays with the seller. AR stays with the seller and AP stays with the seller. It's a clean slate for a business owner. On a stock sale, I would actually, if I was going to purchase a business on a stock sale, I'm actually buying their entity, and there's going to be a lot more risk for a buyer in that scenario. Most of the transactions, probably 95% of them are done as asset sales, but there are times where a stock sale needs to happen. And it's really limited, and there's so much risk on the buyer side that it just depends on the consequences related to the transaction. So when you're buying a business, you're not necessarily buying their credit worthiness, if that's where the question's coming from. Now, that could impact how the business business's performance has been. And again, we're in this short little frame that we're in right now, and we're going to look back. This is
everyone a little bit frozen.
So the cash flow related to that is just going to be a one-time impact. And again, some businesses are flourishing.
Folks can still hear me. Can you comment on the section of this video,
businesses
please?
might be more valuable than they really are. But the next look back period are going to be the next few quarters after this to really determine the value of the business. So it may or may not really hurt the business depending on the performance of that business owner and their credit worthiness. So I hope that answered the question.
Great. The other question we have from Jason, he says, looking good, Chris. Where's my comment about that? Can you talk to people about people who purchase businesses using a self-directed IRA?
Yeah, so there are different funds out there that do 401k, IRA investing. And right now there is, you're not going to have to pay that 10% early withdrawal penalty. That's one of the provisions in the CARES Act. So if somebody wants to go borrow from an IRA or their 401k or whatever funds they may have, there are ways to do that. And Mike, I don't know if you maybe want to touch on that a little bit.
Really good question. I'm probably not as familiar with that section of the CARES Act. I know that to do that, you have to actually have a corporation to actually, is that correct from your understanding, Chris? In terms of you can't do it if you're a sole proprietor or an LLC or an SBA.
Yeah. There's different ways to structure it. The traditional 401ks, and this could be changing daily as we go, but historically, if you were going to borrow from a 401k, you've got to set up a C Corp, and there's some elements of benefits there. I have some good contacts that specifically play in this world and do this kind of financing. So if anybody wants to really get the deep dive on what that looks like, I can definitely lead them in the right direction.
And it's definitely worth exploring because it's a good way for you to take your investment that perhaps you didn't do so well in the stock market and invest it in your own business, which could actually be a much better investment in the long run.
Excellent. So this question is more directed toward you, Mike. So I've heard recently, there's been a sentiment that banks during the process of PPP or distributing those funds, larger banks have been more selective and have hoarded the funds that were available out there. Can you touch about this? Because I feel like there's a slight misconception to this. And I'd like to kind of put it out there so people aren't feeling like we're having select businesses that are favored in this process as opposed to others. And I think you kind of touched this by talking about how there's different pools or different funds for different sized banks that are out there.
And that's really what distinguishes this CARES Act is that we did actually have some carve-outs to make sure that, because when the CARES Act was created, there's a section in there that talks about how it was the intent of the Senate to make sure that priority was given to much smaller businesses and rural-based businesses and women-based businesses and veteran-owned businesses and businesses in low to moderate income census tract and young businesses. But the reality is that through obviously the banks, they will work initially with people that they know who have relationships with them. And so you can't really hoard these funds because the funds are one and done. So, once they're all used up, you can't use them again. So from the perspective of fairly large lenders, it was more the technology. It took quite a while for banks to actually work out how to talk to the SBA or SBA to let banks talk to them. And then very late in the game, the day before the first round of funding was expired, the SBA finally came out with rules about how a sole proprietor could apply for the funds. So it wasn't available as equally as I would have liked. And thanks to our actually Colorado delegation here, Representative Crow, who's on the Small Business Committee, and our two senators actually pushed for this latest version of the CARES Act to be a little bit more democratic, if you like, in terms of access to capital. So carving out funds so that different groups could work with different communities in some respects, or businesses in rural communities who didn't have a bank that did SBA loans in their community, and the bank 50 miles away required them to move all of their relationships to get a PPP loan over there. Those things were not the intent of the Act. So making it more even access is actually pretty cool. But again, each bank is different in how they process the internal loans. There may be some, every bank may not treat them equally. Some might be more interested in bigger loans than small loans. I don't know. But it's really going to be a matter of you with your relationship with the bank, and hope that they would process your request in the order that it was received. And the system is now working. We got 119 projects approved yesterday, which is a record number of loans for us to do in a day ever.
Yeah.
But these are paycheck protection loans, and we did them for a lot of banks. We helped a lot of banks process them, as well as a handful for ourselves. So the loans are going through. You just have to be a little patient. But 100,000 yesterday is not very many for day one of this program. So I anticipate there'll be a lot more that will be approved today, and that will continue through the weekend into next week, hopefully.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great point. Now, I'm going to piggyback on this, and then I'll see if there's any more comments. And we've got some more people that have tuned in. It looks like Caesar and Deandra, thank you for hopping on, both of you, during this time to kind of watch with us. Cheryl and Scott, hello. Hopefully I'll see more of you soon. And Parker, now I'm going to pick on Parker because yesterday when we had a broadcast, he asked the question, and actually it was more of a reference. So we had folks that were sharing that now that people are taking unemployment benefits, they're not likely to return to the workplace. And you're also having businesses that are receiving these funds but aren't rehiring or aren't retaining their employee base, even though there's a parameter in place that a percentage needs to be retained in the workforce. Do you have any information on this, Mike, as far as is there a reporting mechanism that's out there, or how are businesses, is it more on the moral side of it? Morally, are they going to turn around and reinvest it in their employee base?
Again, the proceeds from the protection loan can help for purposes, primarily payroll, but they can also help with rent, interest on existing loans you've got, or even help with the utility payments. You don't have to, in any funds you spend during that first 8 weeks after you get the loan has the potential to be forgiven as long as you bring back a goodly number of your employees. So if you had 10 employees in February, and you, after the end of the 8 weeks, you've only got 5 employees, you're only going to get a 50% forgiveness factor. So from a small business perspective, you want to try and maximize that forgiveness, because why wouldn't you? You get a $20,000 loan, and you can get $20,000 within a couple of months. It's free money. But you don't have to go for the forgiveness. You still are required to use those funds you get only for those 4 things. So it's still relatively cheap loan. It's 1% loan. No payments of principal and interest for the first 6 months, and then you pay the balance over the last 18 months. So it's relatively inexpensive money. And so even if you don't plan on bringing everyone back or as many people back quickly, you can still get some of that loan forgiven, and then you can use the balance of those funds to help you, as I said, pay rent to your landlord, or to help pay utility payments, or all the other things that you have to do related to running a business. So it's still a good option for people to explore if they can.
Well, thank you so much. And if you're just now hopping in, or if you've been tuned in, we started out with Chris, and Chris touched a little bit about buying and selling, and he shared, the importance of always having some sort of an exit strategy or some plan in the future, and not necessarily selling in distressful times, but that during these times, we have incredibly low interest rates. And so it might be an opportunity if you've recently, for example, been furloughed or laid off, or are trying to explore a more stable opportunity for you moving forward. This could be the time for that. And then we also had Mike touch a little bit about PPP. I know I drilled him on that, and that was more of a sidebar than anything, the timing of it. But he also touched about the program that they have through Colorado Lending Source that allows for you to actually purchase the building that you're in, which generally helps with your costs. In times of uncertainty like this, you're not paying your landlord back, you are your own landlord, so you have a little bit more of that security behind it. So was there anything else both of you wanted to chime in on? Thank you, Parker, for so he shares, thank you so much for the great information that we've all shared. Is there any additional comments that we want to make?
Yeah, I'll add that on our website, tworlddenver.com, short for Transworld Denver, tworlddenver.com, we have a resources page with a lot of information for current business owners out there, just different opportunities and things that they can use during these times, as well as ongoing continual times. So check out our resources page at tworlddenver.com. And my phone number is easy to remember if anybody wants to just chat. It's 844-SELL-BIZ, B-I-Z, 844-SELL-BIZ.
I need a memorable phone number, but I'm happy for anyone to email me if they've got any questions or reach out to us. Again, we're a resource as much as anything else to try and help businesses navigate through the opportunities that perhaps exist out there, but also remove some of the misconceptions and misinformation. And unfortunately, all of the scammers are out and about as well too. So the programs are great. They're easy, relatively easy to access. And if you need any questions answered, we're very happy to help with those.
And Mike, what is your email?
Email is just our name, my name, Mike, and then our name, coloradolendingsource.org. So Mike at coloradolendingsource.org. A few letters, but you'll get to me, and it's fairly easy. We can only have one Mike at our organization at any one time, so it works well.
There we go. Generally, that's more than enough with people with that name. No, they're all terrific. So I think that I've included our contact information. That was a question that we had received from Tina, if we can get contact information. So thank you, Tina, for asking that. We've included phone numbers and websites for Chris with Transworld, and then we've included the email for Mike as well that's on here. Please be sure that if you're watching the replay and have questions, let us know and we'll get you your questions addressed. And then if you have any questions past this broadcast, you can also directly reach out to them. I want to thank our two guests for being on here with us today. And in this time of uncertainty, there are other things that are going on. And so this was kind of a broadcast to let you know that there are other opportunities, especially if you're just sitting at home trying to figure out what's next in your life, what's your next chapter. So I do want to wrap it up by sharing that we will be here again, 11 a.m. tomorrow. The focus is sustainability at home. So how to reduce waste. We'll be featuring Mark Petrovic from Republic Services. And in advance, I've actually worn my recyclable earrings that are over here that were handmade. Shout out to AAR River Gallery for having some unique finds. So thank you both to Chris and Mike for joining us, and to everyone that's tuned into this broadcast. If you know someone that would benefit from any of these programs or knowing more, please be sure that you share and spread the word with them. Have a great morning. Bye.
Thank you.
See ya.